I'm convinced that like 20% of our current Twitter feed is probably
Really?
ChatGPT
That high?
or written by ghostwriters. Like the I think we're like, wow, how is AI going to change things? And I would love to know what percentage of our the things we read right now are generative in some way.
That is Jeff Morris Jr. If you've ever used Tinder and maybe even met that special someone, he was a man behind the curtain. Jeff was VP of Product and Revenue at Tinder, where he scaled the app to become the #1 grossing app in the world. Today, he's a leading face of venture capital, investing in super early stage technology companies out of his venture fund, Chapter One. But as great stories often do, Jeff's path started totally outside of that. Before the world of tech, Jeff went to film school and worked grueling hours as a talented screenwriter.
You always hear like Hollywood's tough, right? It's true. Like it's a tough industry.
And as disgruntled as he was, Jeff found the world of writing online and fell into the world of tech, becoming a wildly successful executive and a face of a booming industry. I've had the absolute pleasure of working with Jeff and really enjoyed a conversation that spanned everything from the bleeding edges of tech and predictions about the future.
Handmade content will become a thing, but how do you verify that a human made something?
All the way to some of the crazier stories most people haven't heard about yet.
You have a signed Michael Jordan jersey.
That's actually true.
This is the Labossiere Podcast. Welcome to the new narrative.
We grew up in Menlo Park, I think you know,
Mm-hmm.
and so just seeing how that neighborhood changed quite a bit. Because like people ask me, they're like, "You're from Menlo Park? That must have been absurd growing up." I'm like, it was a pretty just like normal small town, and it just happened to have, it's like a lot of my friends were in tech. Their parents were in tech,
Right.
but we didn't. Like we had no idea who they were, what their parents were doing.
That was just normal.
Yeah, and like venture capital wasn't an industry really. I mean, it was, kind of late mid 90s, but really like, you know, when you think of like these big icons of Silicon Valley, like I now realize in retrospect who they were, and I kind of was around them growing up, but had no idea what they did. It was just kind of like, these were just like parents in the neighborhood.
Wasn't Bill Campbell your football coach? I feel like I've heard this.
Yeah, he was my football coach, gosh, 6th through 8th, I want to say,
Oh my
grade.
God.
And he was amazing, but again, like he didn't tell us that he was, you know, Steve Jobs' mentor or on the board of Google and Apple. Like he just came to football practice and like he, I mean, honestly, like he was a really good coach, but he was like pretty demanding, in a good way. Like he got, and I remember like one game we were up like 50-0 or something, and we gave up one touchdown like right before halftime, and I just remember at halftime him just like going off on us,
Really?
just because we made like clearly like we made a bad play, like but that was the type of person he was. It's like all the details had to be perfect, and I think we definitely won the championship. But winning the championship wasn't even like, it was like there was like another level that we were trying to get to,
Gotcha.
which is pretty cool.
I guess for anybody who's like otherwise uninformed on who Bill Campbell is and what an insane thing it would be to have him be your football coach, like they wrote a book about this guy.
Yeah, so there's a book called Coach, and basically there's this whole coaching industry, right, in the tech world, and Bill he didn't call himself a coach to Silicon Valley executives, but he was really and truly the mentor to Steve Jobs and also the Google Larry Page, Sergey Brin, and he didn't take a ton of like public credit for it. He never, I think if you YouTubed him, there's probably like one or two interviews. He really was like out of the public eye. But he was also the football coach for Columbia, and I think he moved to New York and he was a taxi driver and just sort of like,
Wow.
you know, like very New York. But he grew up in Pennsylvania and was kind of like this kind of like hard nosed, no bullshit guy, which was pretty cool to be around growing up.
That's pretty insane. You know, sitting here today as you know, this really established figure in tech and adventure and everything, I want to take it back to, you know, however many years earlier when that was not the case and that wasn't even really on the path. You wanted to be an author, I think. I've heard this story of you telling this one time that you had in college like a sunroom with a typewriter in it, and you would just sort of romanticize and like sit down and write all this stuff. Where did the authorship and the writing thing come from initially for you?
Yeah, definitely. So I in high school like didn't know what I wanted to do, and I didn't know what I was good at. And I remember I wrote one. We read Catcher in the Rye, and the assignment was to write like a first person prose, like anything you want, but trying to write it in the style of Holden Caulfield, who's the main, you know, the protagonist in Catcher in the Rye. And I wrote a paper, and I got like the teacher pulled me aside and said, I think you could really be a great writer if you want to do this. And nobody, like no teacher had ever told me I was great. Like some teachers had encouraged me, but it wasn't like, hey, like you could do this professionally if you want to. And I thought that was just really empowering. And so I became an English major at UCLA. And then, being in Los Angeles, you just like your jobs, if you're an English major, are primarily working at film studios and reading scripts all day long. And then you write story notes on the script. So you're basically telling the executive if it's a good or bad script, so they can go to their boss, and that person can go to their boss. But I fell in love with writing kind of around college, and then as someone who wants to be a writer, you try and I feel like you like embrace your quirks and try and be almost like a stranger version of yourself because you want to be like a little bit more like unique. And so we were moving into a house in college with a couple buddies, and we kind of walked through the house and saw what rooms were available, and I raised my hand and said I want to be in the sunroom, which I realized they were all hoping to not be in the sunroom, and I thought it was like the greatest thing ever. And so and then I used to type. My mom gave me her typewriter from college, and I would type on it and write crazy things, and it was just I think like a really fun time. I didn't realize how hard the life of a writer is because you like really and truly when I graduated college, it was the film industry was changing, and there wasn't really television as we know it today. There wasn't Netflix, and all the kind of like episodic content was really not around. It was like you're writing for like NBC or something. And so I went to film school, which I think you know, at USC, and tried to be a screenwriter. Like actually tried to do it for 2 years, and ended up getting my first screenplay was optioned by a producer. It got me I was signed by a manager who, the same guy who produced Garden State, which was a pretty well-known movie. It's like a
big deal, yeah.
I was like, holy shit! Like I'm like doing this, and yeah, we ended up going through a bunch of rewrites on that first script that we got optioned. None of them were paid rewrites, because I was 23, and the producer's just like, hey, can you change this? Like, can you change like the third act? I'm like, yeah, we can do that, but it's probably gonna take us a month or two. And it was just so like such a wake up to what you always hear, like Hollywood's tough, right? Like musicians say that a lot, and you hear that from it's true. Like it's a tough industry, and I at that time was really starting to write a lot on Twitter. Twitter came out, and for me, I set up in 2008.
Wow.
And I was like,
early days.
I'm also dating myself, but I thought Twitter was just so cool because I was going through this process where all these like gatekeepers were telling me, no, we're not gonna like make this movie. And then on Twitter, I just started to build an audience on my own, and you have an idea and you publish it to the world, and that was pretty eye-opening to what technology is, right? Like you have this direct to consumer relationship with readers, or you can really publish whatever you want. And so I like literally quit screenwriting and almost nearly after that move to the Bay Area, I worked for a little bit at UTA, which is a talent agency in Los Angeles, on their digital department. But I was like, I need to drive up back to the Bay Area and try and figure out how to get a job in tech, because I'm pretty sure that this is a great way to be creative and also probably a better way to make a living too.
That's such a cool way of getting into tech, and that's sort of like, you're really faced by a lot of people that are gatekeepers in a sense to you doing what you want to be doing, and you come along this platform that lets you do whatever you want. I'm really interested. I've never heard anybody talk about writing in the sense of like playing up your quirks. What do you think you played up, right? Whether it's on Twitter or whether it's in the screenwriting earlier on, like what were those quirks that you really leaned into, do you think?
Yeah, I think in tech specifically, like everyone has asked me how I built an audience on, and it was like very much just being really honest with people. So that wasn't quirky. It was just, hey, while I was at Tinder, I'm going to share as much as I can without getting in trouble, and give you like a really honest perspective on what we're doing on the product team specifically. And that was, people were drawn to that because it was like, hey, Tinder is a thing that people are curious about naturally, and then we were the number one top grossing app in the world, and it was like the head of revenue is like sharing all of his thoughts. Like, I'm going to follow that person.
Yeah.
Pre Tinder, I was like very much like a single guy trying to like find his way in the world.
Yeah.
And so I was like very like drawn to movies like, I don't know, like 500 Days of Summer, like that kind of like male protagonist who's like trying to figure out. And so I'd always just share. I took a lot of inspiration from that. The Graduate's a really good movie.
I haven't heard of it.
Yeah, it's a great Dustin Hoffman movie, and kind of drawn to like those types of personalities that are people just trying to like find their place in the world. And so I remember on Medium specifically, I used to write a lot of articles that were kind of like what it's like to be like single and trying to like figure things out in San Francisco. This was probably in 2010, right?
Wow.
Maybe it was a little bit after that, because maybe Medium wasn't out by then. But yeah, it was kind of that voice, and then it was kind of fun though, because I was writing things that were entirely unrelated to working in tech. Now I feel like I've gone progressively more like inclined to just write about what's going on in the tech industry, and there's so many people who do that. I saw a pretty funny tweet yesterday. It was like, hey, there are like 5 jobs in tech. It was like software engineer, designer. It was like a list, and then it was like AI newsletter writer. Because how many like people are writing about AI right now, and we're all guilty about it, of doing this. Like, you shift to like whatever the current thought is, and but you get a flood of creators within a space when there's these like kind of macro trends that happen. I'm convinced that like 20% of our current Twitter feed is probably ChatGPT.
That high?
I mean, I think it's or written by ghostwriters. Like I think we're like, wow, how is AI going to change things? And I would love to know what percentage of our the things we read right now are generative in some way. And there's also, I heard I had a good conversation about like handmade content will become a thing. It's like, was this made by, and how do you, obviously like there's the whole crypto part of this, but how do you verify that a human made something?
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point we're just going to know, like, I want to read content that a human created with their own thoughts. And so I think there's going to be like full, I've had an idea for like a social network that's like all like human verified content, because at some point you're gonna want that, right? And so it's such an interesting time. Like, I think the past couple of weeks in tech have been probably the most interesting for me as a consumer, just seeing the pace of consumer adoption in AI. And we talk about this a lot because we primarily do, as you know, Web3 and crypto investing, but we're like, holy shit, like this is like real.
Yeah.
And we have to pay attention to what's going on and really take it seriously, and as investors and consumers, because The just like the path to 100 million users within AI happened so quickly. It was faster than any consumer product ever. And so you see this and you're like, we have to pay attention. Like, and then as a consumer, there's going to be so many wild and crazy implications that I can't even begin to grok quite yet. Like I'm trying to wrap my head around where I think this is all going.
What are you most excited about right now as far as AI goes? Like having this sort of product background and maybe having some insights that people aren't picking up on yet, just in terms of like defensibility and what makes the most sense for people. What really intrigues you right now?
Yeah, I think like a big theme of my career has just been like how do you create things as quickly as possible and test to see if there's any consumer interest. I always say like the real MVP is writing a blog post or tweeting something and saying, hey, like I'm thinking about building this and seeing if people respond. And so I think from what I've seen in my career, people spend so much time just like shipping the initial idea, and then you can spend months building something and it just falls flat. And so from a product perspective, I'm really just excited to see just more ideas in the world. And I think all of the use cases for software development are really exciting to me. And so being able, like, no code will feel like a lot of work at some point, right? And being able to, if you and I had an idea on this show right now and went home, like we could go theoretically launch an MVP a lot faster. Yeah. So it'll be interesting. I kind of had this idea this week where like D2C went a little bit too far, and like all the stuff in your Instagram feed is like, like kind of like junky, I don't know, like flavor of the moment clothing.
God, it sucks.
I'm a little bit worried that like some of the craft of product building will lose some of that. And so I'm curious to see how people. I'm like really drawn to, we were investors in Raycast and Superhuman, Cron, which is this productivity calendar. I love just like these meticulous products that you can tell whoever built it spent like. I mean, it's like art meets software almost, right? And I don't know what the quality of like the next gen of software will look like when everything's generative, but we'll see. I mean, maybe the AI will be so great that it's able to reproduce the superhuman quality, and but we'll see. I still think there's like a little bit. I don't know if you feel this way, like when you use Dolly or you see the images, like there's something that's not quite fully human about them, and maybe they'll get better, but they don't feel like something that's like of like when you see like an amazing illustration or photograph, it doesn't quite get there for me personally yet, but maybe it will.
I think it's enough to fool people, that's for sure. Like last week when these rumors of Trump getting arrested on Tuesday were going around, some people, I guess, came up with some prompts and threw them in a Midjourney or Dolly or whatever, and they went viral and people really bought it, which is such a crazy thing to think of, like especially in the context of you talking about, human verified content. It's like what's real, what's not real. One thing that's really been intriguing to me, I think, especially along the AI use cases and stuff, there's this guy, I read this like thread that he put out or article or something that he put out, and he runs this software business writing software tools for Shopify businesses. And he created this tool with I think GPT-4, and what it does basically is he's able to get the names, email addresses, and sort of a brief rundown of what any of these Shopify stores do. He has ChatGPT sort of index them, understand what they do, and pitch them a software tool. And he doesn't even know what it pitched them until they respond in an email. And then he uses it to help build the software tool. So I think especially from like a software services business perspective, it's like pretty groundbreaking, because prospecting in and of itself is like the labor that goes into that is pretty much gone. I find that really compelling.
Yeah, I think the coolest part is the prospecting to creation that
Mm.
you can literally like personalize whatever that prospect needs and really like personalized software, which is kind of cool. I mean, I picture like SaaS products looking different for every. You could have one like umbrella SaaS product, and it like functions a little bit differently for each user's workflow,
Mm.
which is interesting. But we'll see. We might look back on this too and say like, hey, we moved too fast
Too
with the
fast.
ideation, and I always like remind myself, I'm like, it's like really fun to think about what's going to happen in 5 or 10 years, but sometimes when you do that, you like lose sight of like how fun it is just to play around with what's happening right now. Um, and I've seen a lot of different points in time where it's been like the death of the software engineer
Yeah.
has been the narrative, and maybe this is the death. Maybe we're all gonna just be professional podcasters one day. But I tend to think that human creativity triumphs over time, and we adapt to whatever the new technology realities are, and I think that's gonna happen here as well.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. What about retrospectively, right? Like, you haven't been at Tinder for some time now, even though the office is just down the street. What do you think about dating apps today? Like, is anything intriguing? Do you think somebody's doing it totally wrong? Like,
Yeah, I obviously I'm married, but I hear enough from my friends to know. I think that I think dating, from what I hear time and time again, is it's just like such a time commitment that
mm,
now the idea of going on a date itself is like a huge action where,
mm,
um, so I've seen a lot of people trying to just shortcut that, and so video's been a big part of that. We never did any video based dating at Tinder. What I tried to do when I was leaving Tinder, I was on a skunk project to try and figure out how to make Tinder feel smaller. And so you see networks like Raya that are, I think they have 10,000 people per city, and it's a little bit more of a quote unquote curated experience.
hmm
And so I think people want, it's just more like social in general, like people want smaller experiences. Like they don't want to be in this huge sea of people or information. And so I kind of think my best conversations happen in WhatsApp groups or Telegram groups. And so it's just, and they're like, maybe 50 people max. And everybody's kind of like bought into the idea that you can be honest and
hmm
not feel like what you're saying puts you at risk. And so you have better conversations where now it's like you type every word you type on Twitter, you're kind of like, is this word, not even the idea, it's like, is this word going to get people mad at me?
Right.
And that creates, I think, like less, you just feel like you're constrained, right? And so how that ties back to dating, I think I think you want smaller experiences, and you want to know that people, intent's a big thing. Like I feel like when you're on a site like Tinder, like there's just such different use cases, and so I keep hearing like someone told me an idea last week. They're like, I want Tinder for people who like just want to get married within like the next like couple of years and
Oh my God.
and start a family. But if you said that on Tinder, maybe people would be drawn to that, but also like it'd be highly unusual because it's just not the vibe.
Right.
But yeah, it's been a while. I think dating is a really hard category to break into, and so people used to pitch me a lot of ideas. I feel like now people have kind of almost like forgotten, like disassociated me with Tinder in some ways, but the network effects are just so great because it's a hyper local experience, and so yeah, it's a tough. I could not start a dating business from scratch. I think it'd be very hard.
That was actually my next question. If you had to do it, what do you think would give you the best shot of doing something differently?
I think probably like going after an experience that's more catered to like the 18-year-old user. I just think like now if you go talk to younger demos, they think Tinder's like Facebook, almost like,
Hmm.
it's starting to like be like a little bit older in their minds. I'm not sure what the experience would be, but I'd imagine it's even more casual than Tinder and in terms of intent, and doesn't call itself a dating app, and just functions more as a place to have conversations. So people used to always ask me like, what was I afraid of at Tinder in terms of competition, and it was always Instagram. They're like, Instagram was in the back of my mind. It has been used as a dating app for years.
Yeah.
And then Snap was always, but I remember Facebook dating came out when I was at Tinder, and our stock price in one day went down like 20% when they made the announcement. And,
Wow.
I was like, there's no way Facebook's gonna pull this off, and they like, Facebook dating's not even really a thing.
Yeah.
I was always more worried about the younger networks coming after us.
You know, looking back at your time at Tinder, obviously a lot of things people know of to be proud about, scaling that thing to being #1 grossing app in the world. What are some things that, you know, people maybe haven't heard about that you're really proud of doing during your time there?
It's a great question. So when I came in, I wasn't running like revenue on the product team at all. I was initially hired to run CRM, which is a very specific part of the product, push notifications, email. And when I came in, I had a boss who asked me to send a global push notification to, it was at like 50 million people in 190 plus countries and 40 plus languages or something. And we didn't even have a system to do that. And I remember they gave me like a data export that was like, this is probably like not something we ever talk about, but it was just like on like like as a file of like all the addresses, and like go figure out how to send all these people a push notification. And I didn't have any engineering help, but at that time I was like semi-technical, like I could kind of figure things out. And we ended up, the reason I tell this is we ended up like getting that notification out, and it was the top daily active user day ever within 3 weeks of me joining the company.
Wow.
And so it wasn't like this doesn't sound like a big deal. It's like you send a push notification, but we had no infrastructure. But what it did for my career at the company, and this is what I tell people, is like, you need to get really quick wins when you join a company. And I would like walk around the office and like, oh, he's like the guy who like who like created like the highest engagement day ever. Like I was like that, like they were treating me like I was like some like visionary person.
Right.
I was like, I just literally like figured out how to send a push notification with like a raw data export. But I was proud of how quickly I learned things, and I figured out the revenue. I didn't have a background on revenue teams, but I've just always been really good at figuring things out quickly and learning quickly. So I was, fairly proud of that. And then I think the, like the team part, I was a part of the company through, I think, 3 CEOs. And so one career lesson I learned is just being able to like evolve with different leadership styles and survive, frankly. And a lot of people I know like weren't able to make it. Like they, for whatever reason, like they couldn't adjust their style, or they had their ego gone away. And so, I find it, like longevity is always impressive to me at, in careers and also at companies. So if you see someone who's been at, I don't know, like SpaceX for 8 years, you're like,
Right.
How have you done this for 8 years? Like, I'm pretty sure that's like a crazy life experience, and you've managed to figure that out. And I think now in the current world, there's a lot of people who kind of jump every year from job to job, and I've just always been really impressed by people who can stay in one place. I was there for 4.5 years, and which again isn't like a super long time, but in tech that's now
An eternity.
Yeah, exactly.
If you weren't running Chapter One right now, and there was a company you had to go work for, what would you pick? Who are you really impressed by on the product front?
On the product front, that's a great question. I mean, obviously OpenAI would be, I was like looking at I was like, what are they hiring for right now? Because I was very curious. They're not hiring product managers.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
Yeah.
On the on the product side, I've always been like, I don't think I'd want to work there, but I've always been curious about what it would be like to be at Apple for a period of time. Like it's easy. Like I would just love to see like what, like how what like what are the standards there for products? Because I'm pretty sure it's very high. I'm sure you've seen with the Mix AR headset
Oh yeah.
like they've delayed that release for years at this point just to get the product right. And I feel like it's kind of counter to my like MVP comment, but they like really make sure everything they release is up to Apple's standard. I think that's probably like Steve's standards, right? So I think that would be pretty neat. But yeah, and then I think it would be fun to just like work at a company that's doing something entirely different from pure software. So working at Tesla or something would be pretty fun.
Cool.
So yeah, but definitely, I'd say I've probably hung up the product jersey. I'm retired from product, but yeah, sometimes I miss it.
Hung up the jersey. When you look at companies these days, to sort of keep in line with the product stuff for a minute, I'd be curious to hear, what do people usually get wrong? Like, what's the most sort of common mistake when you're looking at a company that's sort of a telltale sign for you?
Yeah, I think there's like two ways to think about this, but one is you build for like a small subset of users, like kind of like the power user. I see this within Web3 and crypto a lot, is people are just building ideas for like, I don't know, like 50 people who actually care. And those are like probably like the thought leaders, like especially for applications, like it's these little like iterative projects that don't really speak to the mainstream user. Like I've always been really interested in challenging myself to think about like what could actually become a global mainstream product. And if you've worked at a company like that and you've seen what it's like to ship products in Asia and LATAM and all these non-US markets, I think it kind of like brings you back to just like identifying one core solution to real problems that people face, like getting back to the customer a lot. And I think it is one of the biggest knocks on crypto, right, in Web3, is like what problems are we solving? And to a lot of people, especially in the US, I think it's hard to come up with an answer to that. I think if you go to Argentina and LATAM, you start to see like real everyday crypto usage. But yeah, I really look for something that is very simple. It's like a single action and kind of on Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Like, are you solving one of those needs in a really new way? And if you can't do that, like people generally won't care. And then I see just a lot of people forget about distribution is just so critical. And a lot of people were talking actually about OpenAI this week and how OpenAI's defensibility now is they now have the application and the interface that people are going to use, right? Like the data set might be commoditized to some degree over time as different large language models come to market, but they have distribution now. It's like once you have distribution, we've seen this with search with Google, very hard to beat that. And so I think a lot of people it's hard to think about distribution, like especially when you don't have a real advantage. It's hard to come up with the answer to that. But I think if you can do both product and distribution well, you'll have a chance. If you just do product well, like that's going to be hard.
You kind of beat me to my next question again around distribution. What do you think is like the most underrated or sort of overlooked model for product distribution these days?
Depends by category, but within social, it's always been about creating experiences that are incrementally better for each additional user you invite to the network. Yeah. And so this was hard in dating because dating was like, you don't want more people on Tinder if you view it as being more zero sum. But I think like the referral mechanics within products are always the most important. Really like thinking about organic viral growth and trying to come up with ways for the network to get stronger with each additional member. It's why I was actually pretty. I mean, you know this about me. Like I really do love crypto Web3. I'm not as philosophical about it as other people, but I've always thought the network effects were potentially very interesting around ownership and kind of that being the distribution mechanic. Is if everybody owns a piece of a network, what does that do for distribution? And I think I've always also been like interested in like franchise models. Like if you like Quiznos, like that distribution model. Like you come up with an idea and you have owners of the network that just go build for you. And so I think the distribution I think that hasn't been solved yet, which we're seeing in crypto specifically, is how do you have sustainable incentive systems that aren't speculative and is that possible, right? And so I think it's very exciting though, because from a go-to-market and distribution perspective, like you can really create virality quickly, and we saw that with Blur and other things. But I don't want to go too deep down a crypto rabbit hole, but yeah. I think that's probably the coolest part of crypto is you have this new distribution mechanic that people are still trying to figure out.
Is that what got you excited about the space initially? Because I mean, it's no secret you've been doing this for a while, right? You're not someone that's just jumped on the train recently. Was that the same reason you got interested? When was this? Back in 20?
It's like 2016.
16,
really?
Yeah.
So I was pretty interested in the sharing economy back in 2000. I'm like really dating myself. In 2010, 11.
Yeah.
In kind of these peer-to-peer networks, and I ended up. I bought Bitcoin around that same time, but I saw the Filecoin white paper in 2014, and unfortunately, I did have a chance to potentially invest, but I did not invest, which was probably not the best decision. But I think when I really like the aha moment for me was when I was like always interested in how do you make finance more social or investing more social, and to me, crypto is like this, like there are these like mini social networks where people are all talking about investing and ownership and making money, which I thought was really interesting from a purely like from a social perspective. And then I saw CryptoKitties in 2017, I want to say, and I was always we were selling digital goods at Tinder. They weren't NFTs. They were super likes and boosts and all these insane in-app purchases that we were creating from scratch. And I found it interesting that people could value digital objects in the same way that they might value physical objects, and that like just made sense to me. And so I invested in Dapper Labs around the same time I bought my first CryptoKitty, and kind of went down the NFT rabbit hole. I think after the ICO phase in 2017, I actually got, I was like pretty disgusted with a lot of things that were happening in crypto. That's maybe a hard word, but like I was pretty turned off by a lot of it because I generally like want to create a career where I'm surrounded by high integrity, smart, honest people. And there are a lot of those people in crypto, but at the time it just felt like it was so many people who were there for the wrong reasons.
Right.
And we saw the same thing in the NFT, kind of the NFT boom of 2021. And now I feel like when I talk to people about crypto right now, it's like the people who are in crypto right now, like for the most part, like really, like we've washed out all the bad actors, and like the people who are still here, like really care about the technology. They want to see the space succeed, and so I think it's a better time to be in the space right now than it was a year ago. But it's very hard to. I think all the news cycles have been really tough for the space, and so we're all hoping for I think a better narrative soon. And so I think that's what we're very excited about the space at Chapter One and continue to be, but also know there's a lot of work to do to repair trust in the ecosystem, and everything that happened last year requires a rebuilding of trust with institutions and users and developers. Like those are the three constituents that I think need to be re-buy into what we're trying to do in the space.
Yeah, trust seems to be a pretty big theme that you've been thinking about a lot recently, and it goes back a lot to what you were talking about with AI and needing to know that what you're interacting with online is, a real person or was created by a real person. That's really interesting. I'd be curious to bring it back to venture, and we're almost coming full circle here, because you spoke about growing up in tech and in the Bay Area. You spoke about, wanting to go be a writer and eventually sort of finding your way back into tech. Why was venture and investing in startups of interest to you during your time at Tinder?
Yeah, I think I always take the view that having a broad awareness of what's going on in the industry is valuable to whatever you're doing as a product person. And so when you're working on a single problem, so we were working on dating, obviously, it's very easy to have your blinders on and not see what's going on in the rest of the world. And so for me, it was a way to, I think, to just improve my my awareness of what was going on, but also I think investing's a ton of fun. It's almost like, to me, it's a hobby. It's not. It wasn't something that I thought it was being work. It was going and finding companies was the same feeling I had in 2003, trying to find MP3s on LimeWire or Napster or whatever we were doing. I've always finding the new thing before everybody else has always been really exciting to me. Starting with music really back in the day, but and now companies. And I also thought I could help a lot of founders, and so a lot of the things we were doing at Tinder, I thought would be helpful, having a revenue growth person on a cap table. But if you kind of really zoom out, I think venture capital, for all of its flaws, is a really great way to, with your wallet, say where you want the world to, where kind of voting with your wallet, where do you want the world to go, and what do you want to see built. And so you can really, I think, have an impact on that if you are investing in the right spaces and working with the right founders. And so I was always thinking that too. It's hey, I can actually have an impact on different parts of the world through investing potentially.
If you had to distill it down, where do you want the world to go? What story do you think that those countless investments have sort of been able to tell on your behalf?
I think it comes down to empowering people to become the best versions of themselves, and through creativity, through financial inclusion, through expanding the industry outside of the U.S. I was always really interested in international talent. Has been we invested in a company called Turing. I have been a big fan of Upwork for a long time, and so if you've ever worked with people outside the U.S., there's so much talent all throughout the world, and so being able to give more people opportunities has been, I think, a big part of my investing work. I think also the creativity part's really important to me. Being able to help people express their ideas, and if they have an idea, they should be able to go build it, and it should be able to, the gatekeepers thing earlier, they should be able to do that without someone saying yes or no. And so I think tech's very empowering for that as well. And then, I think we've been talking about trust a lot. I haven't totally articulated. I don't think I'm able to articulate as well as I want yet, but I think the internet's going to be a lot more confusing than it is right now. And it's already pretty confusing, like misinformation, spam, kind of like information wars. And so I think if there's one thing that would be interesting to work on, I think it's rebuilding the internet a bit and creating mechanisms for trust on the internet again, because especially with AI, like that's going to be a huge part of the next internet, is how do we trust what we're reading every day. And the internet really is the most powerful information source for the entire world. And so if you have if you think about Twitter itself with 400 million users, the impact that can have. You mentioned the Donald Trump image going viral of him getting arrested. Like, I saw that same image and I actually thought it was pretty real.
Yeah.
And so, I think it's going to be interesting to see how we parse through what's true and real in the world going forward.
Gotcha. I want to get to like lessons that you've drawn from investing over the years in a minute, but I'd ask firstly, more broadly, when you reflect on not mistakes or regrets necessarily, but would you say that your biggest mistakes have come from action or inaction?
That's a great question. Always inaction, well, combination. Inaction, so not like you have an idea, not just like going and trying and really like giving it a chance, and then inaction, like fear of sending someone an email because you think they might not respond, or fear of applying for the job because you don't think you're gonna get it. I actually never had that problem, but I see these things around me. One thing I'm trying to get better at, and I think it's a work in progress, is just try not to look back as much, because it's easy to look back at different parts of your career, or in investing, it's really easy to look back on decisions you made, whether to invest or not invest in companies, and really like be pretty hard on yourself. And so I try not to do that. It's this balance between like refining your decision-making abilities by kind of like exploring what you were thinking at that time. But
Yeah.
If you obsess over that, you can really, it can be destructive. And so trying to be kinder to myself, because I know for a fact I'm my harshest critic, and I think we all are in many ways, and we should just trying to be like kinder to myself, because I think the more clear-headed you can be in investing, the better decisions you make, right? Like, and it's very hard to have a clear mind in investing, like with all the noise in the world, in venture capital. But to make a decision for yourself with a clear thought process is always the goal.
One thing and this feels like a decent segue, but one thing I always hear you talk about, just in the context of work and life, is knowing what your superpower is, and really just taking the time, right? Like just sit down for a day and sort of understand where your strengths really lie. What do you think your superpower is?
That's a good question. I think I'm very good at seeing an idea and just like obsessing over it until I understand it in a very short period of time, and like really going deep on. So like when I'm looking at, I remember Rome Research. I was one of the early investors there, and I was like, I hired a Rome Research tutor. I was in the Slack community. I did user interviews with a dozen or something people, all in like the span of 2 days, and I like do not sleep very much in those periods. I just like go very deep quickly. And so I think Haseeb from Dragonfly told us like our job is to learn quickly in venture, and I think I'm pretty good at learning quickly, but also knowing when to like stop learning, and the depth you need to make a decision as an investor isn't the same as like, I don't know, if you were like looking at a machine learning startup and you didn't have a machine learning background, like you're not going to be the one, like you're not trying to become
Yeah.
that person. You're just trying to like really understand their needs and their problems. And so I think I'm pretty great at that. And then I think I've always been a pretty good judgment of talent. I have a pretty good judgment of people and talent, and it probably comes from working a bit of it working at UTA for that short period of time, but just thinking of like all the people in our industry is like being talent almost. It's a very different mindset. So when an engineer is pitching you, you're thinking of them as being like, are they like going to be like a generational talent, right? Like someone who really like transcends the industry and becomes and that's actually, it's very hard to do. I have a hard time with that because you see someone when they're 22 and 23, and I don't know you are around that age, but wise beyond your years, but the personal growth that happens between the ages of 22 and 25 and 30, so you really have to like picture where you think someone's going to be able to get to, and I'm still working on that, but I think part of that just comes down to really understanding someone's motivations. And like Dylan from Figma, like he like very clearly like would be building Figma if he never got venture funding, right? He just like is obsessed with the problem he's solving. And so, but it's hard to get that in like a 30-minute Zoom call.
Right.
And so, yeah, it's something I'm working on.
On the other side of that question, what's a skill that you wish you developed earlier?
Yeah. Gosh, that's a good question. I think it's probably a combination of engineering and math, where I've had to catch up in those areas. So I don't know if I ever told you I like paused my career in 2014 and went to General Assembly to learn how to code, and they're with the goal of not becoming an engineer, but just like I need to like when someone like describes an API, like I need to like know the basics of what they're talking about, or someone talks about, I don't know, like JavaScript, like, hey, like, you've written a function in JavaScript, like just like being able to like speak the language a little bit. And then on the math side, I ended up while I was at Tinder, I did the executive MBA program at UCLA on the weekends. So I was like always trying to like almost like catch up in those two areas and feel good that I have caught up. It required a lot of time in classrooms, and so but I've always loved being in classrooms. So I went to I did 2 postgraduate master's programs. I did General Assembly. I thought about a PhD just because it's like for me learning on YouTube has never been like the way I learn.
Right.
Like, I really love the collaborative classroom setting, but it's those have just been like life experiences where I feel like I've needed to catch up, and I wish I had thought about them sooner.
Interesting. So running a fund now, obviously started off as a solo GP, just sort of doing your own thing. Walk me through like the decision-making process to start hiring people and build out a team around you.
Yeah. A lot of it came out of in fund 1, which was kind of like a $9 million fund. I felt like I could get like, I felt like my like upper bound on the checks I could write was like $500K. And I think it was because people viewed chapter 1 as just being myself, which it was, but it was like, hey, are you gonna, I always thought about like, if you have a $500,000 allocation, that founder is having to make a decision between, a bunch of angels. How many is that? Is that like 25 angels with, or 20 angels with 25K checks, as opposed to your single check?
Right.
Right. And so I was thinking that there was another level we could get to if we were able to build a team that was just more than myself. And also I think the solo GP thing was done out of necessity. Like I raised the fund while I was literally still at Tinder, and there was no way I was going to be able to build a partnership or a team at that point. And then specific to what we're trying to do, we kind of had this thesis that if we could help teams find product market fit faster, we, through our product and engineering and data science backgrounds, that we would have a higher probability of having great funds for our LPs. And I don't have all of those skill sets. We ended up hiring Jameson on the data science side. We have other folks on the team who have different technical backgrounds. I think that was really important to kind of building a better product for founders. And so I kind of thought of Chapter One as being a product for founders, and the product with myself was it was fine. Like, you can call me and I'll help you as much as I can, but it wasn't like a real full product for founders.
Right.
And we take a lot of this very seriously in terms of measuring the quality of our product for founders and tracking the output down to like every interaction that we have with the founder. And we're kind of obsessed with like the hyper details of supporting founders and trying to be the best investor on every cap table. And I think that's been fun to see. We haven't really communicated very well, if I'm just being totally self-reflective. Like, I think our founders feel it. I'm sure if you ask them, they'd be like, yeah, they're doing a really good job for us, but we haven't done it. We need to tell that story more.
Definitely. How's the experience of like stepping into a leadership role and actually having to manage people again? That seems like a really interesting part of the job that goes unheard sometimes.
Yeah, I think it's been, there's two parts of it. One is like running the org, so making sure that people are motivated and there's accountability. Like, we're creating the right culture is a big thing, and the culture's evolved quite a bit. Those are just like everyday operational things you'd see at every company. At a venture firm, some of these things are harder because, especially on the investing side, investing is very much a mentorship vocation, where you have to have great mentors in investing, and really have people who care about teaching you, because you can learn so much faster. And like venture, I really feel like is learned by making a bunch of mistakes, and so having to kind of think about the org, and then also trying to teach the newer investors what I've learned. And by the way, I have so much more to learn. So you also feel a little bit of not imposter syndrome, because I don't feel that. But you feel like you're like, I'm teaching them, but I'm also trying to like level up too.
Right.
And there's this kind of tension between those things. But yeah, I love it. I think we've built a really unique culture and team, and I think I mentioned the culture evolution. Like, I think we're all pretty academic in how we pursue venture as a craft, and wanting to really build something that is sustainable. And yeah, it's been funny. Like, I think our team is like pretty, I don't know if introverted is the right way, but we've gone like a little bit more on that side of the spectrum. Whereas, I think in the bull market especially, it's like very hard to slow down and do the work, and do a lot of the thesis building and all that, all the work that we've done for the past 6 months, which I think we've done well. There's still another level that we have to get to, and so, but I think we're always going to feel that way too. Like, I think we're always going to feel like underdogs. I certainly do, and I think you do too.
I think it's important to have a chip on your shoulder sometimes. You mentioned on the mentorship front, I know there's a bunch of folks who you definitely consider mentors and have really influenced you over the course of your career and still do. When you think about someone that embodies where you want to be in 10 years' time, who comes to mind?
It's a great question. So like the OG, like GOAT Michael Jordan is Fred Wilson, which we talk about a lot. And I think USV's got a really great culture that we are trying to model Chapter One after in many ways. Strong thesis areas, you know, really verticalizing our investment work. The one of the other people I think is fantastic is Mike Maples at Floodgate. They have a small team. They have, I think, probably 10 people in their office, but they have, I think, they've been around for 15 years as of last week. I think that's super impressive. Like 15 years in venture is, I don't know how many cycles that would be, but I mean, if you think about when they built that fund, it was around the time mobile became a thing, and then they've seen some pretty big market shifts. So I think Floodgate's a good example. But yeah, and then my grandfather is my lifelong hero, Mervyn Morrison. So he's someone I look up to, and he's no longer with us, but he's probably someone who I think about what he would do almost definitely every day, like different situations. I'm like kind of like trying to think about him in my decision making. So he started a business that ended up going public, and he's just was a really great guy, like a great judge of character, loyal to his friends, and a good businessman. So
definitely. You mentioned a couple there. Are there any specific qualities that like you really admire across, you mentioned some of the folks at USV, you mentioned Mike Maples and your grandpa. What qualities sort of combine the two?
Yeah, I think they're really all lifelong learners. And so I have spent time with Mike Maples where we invested in a company together in 2020, and he showed me the deal memo he wrote, and it was like 8 pages, and it was before it got IC approval, and he's like the co-founder of the fund, right? And he does the work, like he's very academic about like the writing culture, documenting every decision he makes, so he can look back on that over time. Fred Wilson, I don't know Fred as well. I did have the chance to play a round of golf with him last year, which is pretty cool. My little Fred story is before the round we were all warming up, and he skipped the warm up because he was minting NFTs on his laptop in the parking lot, which I thought was just like, wow, like you're doing it, like you're like you really love what you do if you're at that stage in your career, like really like diving in that deep. And so I love the lifelong learning mentality. And my grandfather, who I mentioned, went to the office until he was 95.
Wow.
And so he read the newspaper every day before he went to work. Like these are like just little things. They're slightly like, they sound like so antiquated at this point, but like how cool that you just have these routines and really kind of like develop, I think, excellence over a long period of time.
In addition to like you talking about the sort of longevity, I think across a lot of these figures that it seems like you really admire, there's also this, and I think I probably relate here, there's this sense of obsession that I feel like a lot of them share. How do you tend to approach that, right? I think the common question is, oh, like, don't you have work-life balance? Like, how do you think about that? Because you seem like someone who, I think similarly to a lot of those people, is in a good way obsessed with what you do.
Your priorities change a lot as you get older and your time requirements change. And so you have to create like a lifestyle where you can dive in and be obsessed for days or weeks at a time, and then pull yourself out and go spend time with your family and be as excellent at home as you are in the workplace. And so I think I think for me, it's like knowing, like, it's almost like knowing, like, every time you find something that you really want to dive deep into, like going really deep for a couple days, as I mentioned, like you can learn a lot in 2 days.
Yeah.
I think we underestimate. I was thinking this weekend, like, there's something I wanted to figure out. I was like, if I took all day off tomorrow, I could probably in 10 hours, like, become pretty smart on it. Like, I'm not going to be an expert, but
Yeah.
but I think it's about really time management, and also knowing that your life experiences outside of work are really helpful in the context of work. And so we're in Los Angeles today. Like, I specifically want to live here and not in the Bay Area where I grew up, because I like the diversity of professions and industries here, and the fact that you can go to dinner and nobody knows. I went to dinner last night with somebody, and they're a friend, more recent friend, but we probably had dinner 5 times, and I told him I worked at Tinder, and he didn't even know that.
Really?
Which maybe I should, like, but it just shows you, like, people don't care what you do. For tech, people do not care what you do down here as much as and I find that really refreshing, because you can go to work, be obsessed, and leave work, and you're just somebody at dinner. Nobody knows who you are, and nor should they care what you are. Like, I think we've all in tech, like, we've I think, like, over romanticized what we actually do, and created heroes out of our industry, where, like, if you talk to, and I think it's what actually rubs people in other industries sometimes the wrong way about people in tech. Like, my brother works he came from traditional finance, and he just tells me insights, not him, but like what, like, people in New York who work in finance think of, like, venture capitalists. And I think a lot of it comes to, like, we're, like, it's like a very, like, self-promoting industry, and a lot of it happens because we built the tools to promote ourselves, like,
Yep.
Mainly being Twitter and other things. But it's a great industry, so I don't want to sound down on it, but I do kind of like keeping things in check a little bit, and realizing that what we do is not, it's fun, it's exciting, but it's, it's not like, we're not like the best, most visionary people in the world. There's a lot of really smart people in healthcare and, I don't know, science and education outside of, who don't work in pure tech.
I'd always say I'd be a scientist if I were any smarter. I think that's really, like, top of the pyramid for me.
Really? That'd be
yeah,
pretty
because
cool.
you're, like, really at the cutting edge. I genuinely don't think I'm cut out for it. I think it'd be great, though. Okay, I have some stories. I want to know if they're true or not. First one is, you have a signed Michael Jordan jersey.
That's actually true.
Oh my God.
I also have so we have this little room where we watch TV, and it has the Jordan jersey, and it has a framed Michael Jordan cigar, because I saw him at a hotel when I was younger, and I was probably similar to, like, the NFT. I was obsessed with collecting things growing up. Like, people say that, like, I was obsessed. Like, my room at home looks like an old sports museum. And so I saw Michael Jordan, and I saw other people walk up to him and ask him for autographs, and he said no to every single one, and he had bodyguards, and it just wasn't happening. And so I saw his wife at the time, Juanita Jordan, was at the hotel, and I walked up to her with my younger brother and just said, "Hey, I know you guys are on vacation. I don't want to bug you or Michael, but I'm a huge fan, and would love to send him a letter and ask him if he would sign a jersey, because I don't want to do it while he's on vacation." And she thought it was really cool so she gave me their office address, and she said, "If you send me something, I'll make sure he signs it." So he signed this jersey, and it has, like, a with compliments of Michael Jordan postcard, and he signed, like, best wishes Michael Jordan. Like, it was, like, pretty cool. But I think I just took a different approach than other people. On that same trip, I'm not as proud about this. I did see him smoking a cigar, and he threw it away in the trash can, and I went and grabbed it. I was like, this is as close to Michael like as I'm gonna get. And so I framed that too, and I posted on Twitter, and there ended up being a news article that was written about it because somebody in the responses offered, I think it was like $10,000 for it. It was like some wild. I forget the exact amount, but it was. And so someone said like the headline was like, former Tinder executive gets like $10,000 offer for a Michael Jordan cigar.
That's
it's
a
probably
headline.
like
Oh my God.
it's like the most bizarre headline. Like I'm sure people clicked on it, but yeah, it's pretty funny.
So what's like the go-to, like, okay, so we walk into your house, what are we looking at? Is it all basketball stuff? Is it any kind of sports? I'm curious where this really boils down to.
So childhood, I was obsessed with Game U's shoes primarily.
Okay.
It's a very niche thing, but
Okay.
and so I would go to games, and before the game, I get there really early and ask the players after the game if I could have their shoes, and sometimes they'd say yes. Or another sort of trick I'd use is I would go on eBay and you can buy lots of cards of any player on eBay, and players want those cards because they would send them to people who would write them letters, and they didn't always have. So I'd go up to the player and I'd buy a lot of their cards and give them the cards to be a couple hundred of their own card. And these were like cheap, not fancy cards, and say, hey, here's a lot of your cards. Like, I got this for you because I know it's like you can send these to your fans. Would you be willing to give me your shoes? Because like I love you as a player. And so there were like these little things that you learn along the way. And so we were so deep in the AOL. There were AOL chat rooms where all you do is buy and sell memorabilia and cards, and you'll list what you have, and you'll say DM me if anyone wants to make an offer, negotiate, and you start like live negotiations.
Oh my God.
It's fun. And so now we built a little room at my house now where it's a combination of like the best memorabilia from that period with our own like sports memorabilia. So it'd be like a photo of me playing high school basketball. My Simone was a cheerleader, so it's like her like a newspaper article of her like like the Manhattan Beach newspaper as like a cheerleader.
Cool.
But we thought it'd be kind of funny. And then our friends, some of them played like low level college sports, but they put like my friend was a UCLA water polo player, so he put like a signed UCLA Speedo on the wall and
Cool.
like that type of stuff. So it's kind of fun.
Right next to the Jordan jersey.
We thought it'd be funny if it's like you have like greatness and then you have just like these like average people.
Okay, next one is you sent a handwritten letter to Bill Gates. Is that true?
That's true. Yeah.
What's the story?
So the story again is there were these lists on the internet of people who would actually respond to you if you wrote them a letter.
Oh.
And I saw Bill Gates was on that list, and I would always send primarily like letters to athletes, but I thought it'd be really funny if I sent Bill Gates a letter, and I have that on my wall actually, a signed Bill Gates photo, which is pretty. He responded. I don't know if it was Bill or like who knows if it was actually Bill, but I have a signed Bill Gates photo.
So you wrote to him asking for a signed photo?
You would ask for a signed photo, and then another small trick is you would self-address an envelope to yourself and put a stamp on it.
So it's like ready to go.
So all they have to do is put it in, because a lot of athletes, and they would complain like, I have to like find a stamp and pay for postage. So you're just trying to like give them every reason to like just not say no.
Just make it easier for them the entire way through. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. Those were the days. I feel like, I don't know if like autographs are as big now, and it seems like collectibles are huge, obviously, but it's more on the sports card side.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know too much about like that industry or that space, if you could call it. It's probably an industry. I think it's worth calling it that. On the topic of like writing notes to people, I've heard of a trend of people writing to like business magnates when they're getting married. because oftentimes they get like a little gift. Apparently this is a thing that people have started doing.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah, but you've got the tricks of the trade when it comes to self-addressed letters. Yeah, I think that was a thing for me as well, just reaching out to people and seeing if they'd respond, especially through college. I think people often like overlook, or they really underestimate the number of people that are like, that'll just like get back to you if you have like a good enough question or reason to be reaching out in the first place. And for me, you know, being in college when I was, you know, I probably started doing this when I was like 19. You just shoot someone an email and you're like, hey, like I'm a college student. I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. Like send them an email, be like, what do you think? Oftentimes you get a phone call or you get like a really thoughtfully worded email and you can meet some pretty incredible people. I always thought that was just the most overlooked like professional hack that no one was capitalizing on.
Yeah, 100%. And it comes back to venture capital, right? Because you see like a cool company on TechCrunch, or you see an amazing founder, and do you have that like muscle memory of like see it, write the email? Like it's very simple, right? You see something interesting, you figure out how to contact that person, you write them something that's relatively interesting that shows some level of thought, and like they will likely get back to you. And so yeah, I don't know if it's like effort or like people being shy or not feeling like they're worthy, but I think a lot of people just don't do that, unfortunately.
I think people assume that it's like not worth the effort because it's not going to happen in the first place. And like, sure, like I would be the first to admit, like the vast majority of people that I was cold emailing at age 19, like were not getting back to me, but mostly because the emails were terrible. But you know, you get in enough reps and it does tend to pay off.
For sure.
Cool. Jeff, I have one more for you.
Yeah.
This is the same one I always ask everyone at the end of every podcast, which is, you know, inside or outside the scope of everything we've talked today, what should more people be paying attention to?
People should be paying attention to like what would make them happy. It sounds very very like simple, but I think a lot of people in our industry tend to burn out or find themselves not feeling satisfied with what they're doing when they are doing things for other people. And so like really being in touch with what makes you excited to get up in the morning. And if you're not excited to get up in the morning, like how do you get out of that situation? And trying to create more flexibility for how you can succeed in life, I think is a big thing. I think people tend to I think people aren't as risk averse as, this isn't everybody, but I see a lot of people in tech who really do the safe thing. Even people who are like financially okay, right? And so you have to have like that freedom, but it's people who like get stuck in a path and they don't know how to get out. And so I think, especially at your age, younger, I think it gets harder and harder to kind of like move your career in directions that make you happy. But I always really stress that. And I see it a lot with founders in crypto right now, right? It's like probably a hard time. It is a hard time to be a founder in crypto. Like you're waking up, you're reading all these headlines, and some of them are like, you know what? I've realized I'm not happy in this space. Like, but I'm afraid to leave it because I'm afraid of what other people would think. You know, like, would I look like I'm like abandoning my friends?
Right.
And I'm like, people just want you to be. Your real friends want you to be happy too. And so we've had one of these calls, I think, in the last month where the founders told us this, and I was like, no problem. Like whatever money's left, like feel free to return it and like go do something else because you're wasting your time, and time is the most important thing in life, right? And I think people are afraid of letting other people down a lot, and so that's a big part of it. And then and I think trying to create a sense of knowing that you have more control over your life than you think you do. in many situations. So, in the case of like chapter 1, like we can explore anything as investors. We can wake up one day and say, hey, we want to go, something interesting is going on over there. Like we want to go try and figure that out. And I think people tend to like almost like typecast themselves into a certain brand or a certain idea of like what they can and can't do. And so we're trying to get away from that. I know you've probably heard this over different Zoom calls and other things.
Cool. I think we're done. I think that's it. Thank you for doing this, Jeff. This has been amazing.
This is awesome.